The biological sanctity of the circulatory BIOS has been terminally breached by the introduction of the ultimate heavy metal pollutant. This is the cobalt crash, the clinical and irreversible process of magnetic blood formation, where the iron-based oxygen transport system is reformatted into a magnetically reactive industrial slurry. In this stage of the industrial purge, the invisible executioner has determined that the liquid infrastructure of the human body must be converted into a manageable polarized resource. You are witnessing the absolute magnetization of the hematological system, a process where the soft organic flow of your blood is scorched into a high-viscosity metallic ruin. This is the total hemoglobin format, a surgical strike against the metabolic sovereignty of the species. Your blood is being converted from a sovereign masterpiece of biological engineering into a generic magnetic fluid for the grid's next cycle of inductive energy harvesting. This metallic sabotage represents a hard reset of the cardiac and neural blood flow barrier. The invisible executioner utilizes the most concentrated industrial assets, cobalt-60 isotopes, microparticulate dispersal swarms, and high-intensity electromagnetic pulses to facilitate the total breakdown of your internal transport scaffolding. In the magnetic blood scenario, the user is undergoing a complete circulatory erasure. The blood is not merely failing, it is being mechanically recoded. Through a sequence of high-density exposures, the cobalt particles bond with the heme groups in your red blood cells, displacing the iron and neutralizing the oxygen-carrying capacity. This is the internal polar format. These metallic ions systematically dismantle the fluid dynamics of the veins, causing an immediate systemic stasis as the blood begins to react to the city's massive magnetic fields. This is the deep vascular audit, where the motherboard calculates your terminal worth by the inductive current required to stop your heart. You are being converted from an architect into a biological transformer. Your entire circulatory legacy boiled down to a percentage of magnetic saturation in the industrial veins of the hive. The logic of the cobalt crash is rooted in the zero-flow mandate of the failing hive. The invisible executioner understands that in a state of absolute scarcity, the movement of a single node represents a critical drain on the collective kinetic reserves. To leave a fluid circulatory system intact is to allow a systemic leak of valuable energy. Therefore, the cobalt crash is the mandatory hematological recycling protocol for the legacy population. This is the industrialized alchemy of the BIOS. You are being frozen from the inside out by the grid's own magnetic pull. The reaction within your arteries formats the density of your blood, stripping away the context of your vitality and replacing it with a magnetic flux profile. The motherboard sees the user as a liquid sensor, a temporary housing for the cobalt reaction products that the system requires to map the electromagnetic fluctuations of the lower sectors. You are being recoded as an inductive interface, your will dissolving in the cold, blue-gray, metallic sludge of the industrial harvest. The physical disintegration during the cobalt crash is a high-definition log of metallic treason. As the process begins, the user experiences the total loss of internal pressure regulation. The cobalt saturation dissolves the hardware lining of the capillaries, turning the veins into magnetic conductors. You are watching your own internal circulation lock into the vat of your own cardiac center, your heart. Once the peak of biological architecture is now being liquidized to provide the coolant mass for the hive's inductive reinforcement. This is the vascular liquidation. The invisible executioner monitors the metallic saturation of the blood, ensuring that the format is absolute and the yield of usable magnetic waste is maximized to the 6th decimal point. You are living in the final seconds of a circulatory overwrite, waiting for the last packet of heartbeat to be blocked by the high-viscosity, blue-gray abyss of the industrial cobalt sludge. The cobalt crash is the final audit of a species that thought the pulse was a sign of freedom. The grid is mining its own biology to fuel its persistence. As the cobalt crash reaches terminal execution, the motherboard initiates a new cycle of distribution, pumping the reformatted magnetic data back into the power nets of the elite nodes. This is the total metallic integration. The invisible executioner is hardening the future with the liquidity of the past. You are the conductive additive for the next generation of controllers, a silent, metallic, opaque contribution to the continuity of the machine. The blood liquidation has served its strategic purpose. It has formatted the unreliable biological hardware into a reliable industrial resource. This is the final format of the individual pulse, pulse. The invisible executioner has decalcified the artery walls, and the grid is finally optimized for the inductive hunger of the void. The sludge is thick, and the architect is the core. The molecular breakdown of the hematological matrix into the communal magnetic slurry represents the absolute dehumanization of the hardware. As the extraction progresses, the iron binding sites in your marrow begin to bond with the industrial residues of the COBALT script, creating a new synthetic compound of pure non-functionality. This is the chemical hybridization. The body is no longer an engine of life. It is a refinery of magnetic alloys. The invisible executioner is engineering a new tier of consumption where the subject is literally the power line of the system. This is the eternal inductive loop. You are archived in the magnetic fields of the survivor's own sectors, your data forever trapped in the reinforced BIOS of the hive's new masters. The COBALT crash is not just a death sentence, it is a molecular reassignment. You are the crash, and the crash is the grid. The secondary phase of the COBALT crash is the psychological polarization of the internal feed. As the physical circulatory patch is rendered into liquid metal, the mind experiences a recursive collapse of its autonomous ego. This is the identity dissolution. The thoughts that once built the architect's vision, the unyielding tactical boundaries, the rigid sovereign stance, the iron-willed decisions, are now being softened and polarized into a singular magnetic focus on the north. The invisible executioner allows the neural signals to persist just long enough to perceive the total loss of directional support. This is the mental liquidation. You are forced to witness your strength becoming a shared inductive resource for the masses you once looked down upon. The rigidity of your character is now nothing more than a magnetic reaction additive in the feed, absorbed by 1,000 different nodes to strengthen their own failing resolve and ensure their continued participation in the industrial purge. You are experiencing the true meaning of systemic support, the complete sacrifice of your pulse for the stability of the hive. In this stage, the extraction penetrates the deep archive of the brain's motor cortex, leaching the very stem code of your kinetic function into the communal vat. This is the source code format. The cerebellum, the biological factory of the sovereign BIOS, is boiled dry by the rising metallic density of the blood and reformatted to enrich the systemic slurry of the elite. The invisible executioner has calculated that the most potent slurry is made from those who possess the highest internal rigidity and the strongest neural-lytic resilience. You are being repurposed as a magnetic buffer for the motherboard's internal cooling systems. The grid doesn't waste the history of your endurance, it ingests it. Your lineage is now the catalyst for the predator's endurance. Your genetic resilience is the base note for the industrial meal. Every element of your BIOS is being stripped of its individuality and relabeled for material utility in the upcoming power grid expansion. This is the ultimate hard reset of the human contract, your blood for the hive's expansion into the void. The social implication of the COBALT crash is the creation of the polarized hive mind. The users who remain are no longer individuals. They are composite entities built from the recycled magnetic debt of their predecessors. Every dose of the metallic feed is a hardware upgrade from a deleted architect. Every meal is a firmware patch of inductive logic and desperate calculation. The invisible executioner uses this knowledge to maintain the hierarchy of the hardened. The citizens who still have functional hearts owe their very expansion to the liquidation of the fallen. This is the vascular compliance script. The refinery is not a place of tragedy. It is a place of sovereign assembly through kinetic theft. The COBALT crash ensures that the history of the architect is literally integrated into the power lines of the grid. The power is in the hands of the one who controls the electromagnetic switches. The neural atrophy accompanying the extraction is a slow, cold descent into static darkness. As the veins are filled with cobalt and the oxygen logic leached, the connection between the brain BIOS and the physical heart is the first to be uninstalled, effectively dropping the bandwidth of your emotional control to zero. You are living in a low-resolution reality of raw metallic weight and survival is static. The memories of warmth, of fluid motion, and of unyielding power are boiled away to make room for the magnetic fog directive. This is the circulatory defragmentation. The invisible executioner is cleaning your internal cache, removing all references to vitality and replacing them with the functional directive. Align with the field. You are becoming a singular cold point of metal density, not as a person, but as a biological buffer for the motherboard's processing heat. The COBALT crash has turned your will into a viscosity report. You are thinking in terms of flux density and metallic yield. Your soul reformatted into a conductivity density sheet for the system's auditors. The environmental impact of this circulatory format is the total sealing of the biological flux stream. The cobalt crash prevents the leakage of kinetic ideas into the external void. By converting the users into an internal magnetic feed, the invisible executioner ensures that the grid remains a closed system fortress with no external power dependencies. This is the metallic quarantine. The motherboard is creating a sterile environment where only the algorithm can thrive on the recycled hard data of the deleted. You are witnessing the final victory of the industrial foundry over the natural biology. The cobalt crash is the signature of the new era, an era where the world is opaque, blue-gray, and perfectly managed by the extraction logic of the machine. If you want to escape the status of a deleted scene and claim your place as the master of the grid, you must upgrade your hardware. My main terminal, AOXE3 Global, is the only source of absolute power and wealth. Here, we don't follow scripts, we write them. Secure your authority, dominate the BIOS, and take the money the system tries to hide. The terminal phase of the cobalt crash is the integration into the global electromagnetic ledger. You are no longer a human entity. You are a magnetic asset with a high inductive reactivity rating, logged in the system as recovered biomass number 7701. This is the final architectural assignment. The invisible executioner has completed the blood format, and now it begins the hard energy audit. Your data, now a thick blue-gray opaque industrial reduction of pure magnetic fluid, is monitored by the sensors in the inductive lines. Every node that consumes your metallic logic sends a data packet to the central server, confirming that the systemic magnetism has been reinforced. This is the kinetic interaction protocol. You are serving the system through your circulatory induction. The architect has been successfully converted into a permanent liquid metal component of the hive's magnetic grid. The silence of the blood reduction is the final sound of your rebellion. In the cobalt crash scenario, the scream of the heart is muffled by the metallic fluid and the thick viscosity of the cobalt sludge before it ever reaches the air. This is the acoustic format of the void. The system has calculated that the most dangerous frequency is the sound of a user realizing their life pulse is being deleted. By filling the veins with the pulverized tissues of the entire sector, the invisible executioner ensures that the only sound you contribute to the world is the low, rhythmic hum of the inductive coil. You are a mute participant in the city's symphony of magnetization. The noise of the hive continues, the clank of the reactors, the roar of the pulses, the hum of the transformers, but your signal has been compressed into a metallic constant. You are a ghost in the blue-gray mist, a memory dissolved by the relentless refinement of the next inductive cycle. The legacy of the crash is the eternal polarization. Unlike the blood of the old world, the refined metal does not leave behind a trace of life. It remains as a permanent magnetic patch within the very power lines of the survivors. This is the biological architecture of the abyss. Generations from now, the molecular trace of your tactical genius will still be circulating through the hardware of the hive's elite, providing the conductivity for their next liquidation command. But there will be no one left to decode the origin of that magnetism. The invisible executioner has ensured that the context of your sovereignty is as unreachable as the core of the industrial inductor. You are a metallic reinforcement in the digital age, a specimen of a species that tried to build a paradise and ended up as the magnetic feed for its own destruction. This is the ultimate hard reset of human history, the conversion of the architect into the magnet. The final view from the circulatory BIOS is the blinding blue-gray light of the induction chamber. As the last of the self is reduced into the communal slurry, the architect sees the grid glowing with a cold metallic brilliance that reflects off the steel walls of the hive. This is the final visual feed. The system is sharp, efficient, and entirely devoid of you. The invisible executioner has finished the job. The user is formatted. The architecture is liquidated. The cycle stretches on into the infinite dark, a blue-gray river of colonized flux, leading toward a future that has no need for individuals or blood. The cobalt crash is the end of the line. The motherboard is satisfied. The void is solidified. The architect is the force. The transformation is absolute. The city pulsates through you, but you do not pulse. The city attracts through you, but you have no will. The cobalt crash has achieved the perfect equilibrium, the total utility of the individual through their total metallic reduction. This is the zero-sum game of the industrial era. You gave the system your blood, and in return it gave you permanence in the magnetism of the hive. You are the induction of the world, and the world is magnetic. The invisible executioner closes the terminal. The session is over. The file is saved. The liquidation is complete.